Hello and greetings. I hope you are well. You are watching Psyche Alchemy. This is actually the third part of our series discussing the topic of shame. The name of this series is It Wasn't Your Fault. It Wasn't Your Fault is also the title of the book that is our source on this journey, written by Ms. Beverly Engel. If you haven't seen the two previous parts, you must watch them first. My recommendation is to leave a bit of a time gap between them. Let a few days pass, allow those ideas to circulate in your mind and in your being, and then come to this episode. In this episode, we want to follow up on our discussion and continue it. At the end of the last episode, we talked about a questionnaire we reviewed together to see if we suffer from paralyzing shame. From this point on, the author dedicates the chapter to the topic of why shame is so paralyzing. She tells the story of one of her clients, and in this story, she explains the cases and points she wants to make. She tells the story of a middle-aged man who, when he came to see her, his whole life was on the verge of collapse and was actively collapsing. He had gone through a divorce, his romantic life and his relationship with his children were in shambles, and he was suffering from alcohol and sex addiction. Broken and shattered, he came to see Ms. Beverly Engel. She says that this man was in the loneliest days of his life, and the man himself said, "If I were in the shoes of the people who knew me, I would have distanced myself from me too." He comes in this condition, seeking to find the root of all the tragedy in his life. What they arrive at in the talk therapy and psychotherapy sessions is a bitter experience that this man went through in his childhood, from the age of 5 to 10. That experience was being sexually abused by his grandfather, who was certainly a predator from the age of 5 to 10. We talked in the previous episode about how this experience gives a child feelings of helplessness, humiliation, worthlessness, and loneliness. What the author describes here is that John, which is a pseudonym for the client, couldn't take it anymore by the age of 10. He was older and more aware of the pain being inflicted on him, so he tells his grandmother the story, perhaps hoping to find refuge. The grandmother's reaction is to make the issue public. She throws the grandfather out of the house, and they get a divorce. However, a crucial point here is that for this child, in addition to the shame of this tragedy and this horrible event, other layers of shame are added to his existing shame. One is the shame and humiliation resulting from the violence and the feeling of helplessness in this horrific experience. But after that comes the shame of the abuse being disclosed. In a way, after the grandfather is separated from the house and leaves, it's as if the rest of the family, the aunts and uncles, blame John. It's as if they treat him in a way that suggests he might have somehow caused this tragedy. And then comes the shame of having had such a horrific thing happen to him. The author continues the story saying that the grandfather's death a few years later places the feeling of guilt more and more heavily on this child's shoulders. In a way, it's as if death has a redeeming quality. When this grandfather dies, his children, the uncles and aunts, start to remember that he wasn't such a bad father after all, wondering what caused us to lose these final years of seeing and socializing with him. And at that moment, all the heavy gazes, without a word being said, are fixed on John's face, on the face of this abused child. Here, the author talks about the multiple layers of shame. Let's connect this tragic story we've recounted with her theoretical discussion. She says one layer is the shame and humiliation resulting from the experience of abuse itself. Another is the shame resulting from the disclosure of the abuse. Here's an important point. If we have a child around us who reports abuse to us, who seeks refuge in us, our reaction to their helplessness and trauma is crucial. Sometimes our reaction can inflict more suffering on the child than the suffering they have already endured. It is very important how accepting we are that we understand the child is the victim in this story and how open our arms are to comfort them. Of course, most people, perhaps out of ignorance, may not have had these resources available to them in the past. The author also talks about the shame resulting from the projection of the abuser's shame. She suggests that the grandfather in this story was likely a victim of another story himself, of a suffering that he had not made conscious, and as a result, he had turned into an aggressor. The behavior is deeply unnatural, you see. We must look for the roots of this horrific madness. Perhaps this is one possibility. The author says that in these situations, it's as if the aggressor projects his shame onto the victim, the child. This becomes another layer of shame that the victim carries with them for their entire life. The shame resulting from our reaction to shame is yet another layer. In response to shame, people engage in other behaviors, especially from puberty onwards as they get older. These reactions might take the form of addictions, for example, addiction to alcohol, sex, pornography, or gaming, which is also an important addiction, as well as addiction to various types of smoking and other substances. My point is that this collection of behaviors adds to the person's sense of shame, because from the perspective of observers who don't know the child's story, that person seems useless, lazy, or weak. So the shame resulting from our reaction to shame is itself another layer. This is an important point. The next layer is the shame of having disappointed parents and other authority figures. Let's pause here so I can explain this further. When we are children, we have no definition of our identity, of who we are. We simply don't know. We haven't discovered ourselves yet. We don't know how beautiful we are, how smart we are, how worthy of love we are. We are full of I don't knows. So where do we gradually start to recognize ourselves? Where do we build our definition of identity from? Brick by brick. From the adults, the people around us, our parents. They act as a mirror for the child. It's in the mirror of adults that a child sees their own image and recognizes who they are. How beautiful am I? How lovable? How smart? All those childhood questions are answered in these constant encounters with the mirror that adults hold up. The important point is that when a child experiences abuse, be it emotional, physical, or sexual, this sense of self, this definition of who they are, is disrupted. That's why shame is such a fundamental thing. It's foundational to a person's personality, because it strikes right at the moment you are figuring out who you are, causing that sense of self to be built incorrectly. In homes where love and affection were not expressed, where a child did not witness love, or where love was conditional on achievements, successes, or grades, a healthy sense of self cannot be formed. So, this is our discussion up to this point. From here, the author explains that the cure for this shame is compassion. It is compassion that gives us the courage to meet with ourselves. Shame grows in silence. It persists through the curse of silence, and what can break this curse is shouting, speaking out, and sharing. What helps a victim speak? What allows a child to talk about what they have been through and narrate their story? Is self-compassion. So how does this self-compassion heal us? Self-compassion takes away the feeling of invisibility from that wounded child. When we share, we are seen, we are heard, our suffering is acknowledged, and we understand that our suffering does not define our entire identity. Remember we said shame comes and constructs our entire identity? Like a curse, it casts a shadow over our entire being. When we narrate that story, the shame remains a wound, but its all-consuming effect on our identity is lost. Then we are a child who has gone through suffering. By giving it a voice, a body, and words, we define it. It becomes a small part of our identity. I am the one who went through this suffering. I am the one who grew up in these conditions. But this is just one part of my identity. This is where we can heal. Acknowledging the child's experience of suffering is incredibly healing, and for that we must take steps one by one. The entire path we want to take is practically this. But first, let's examine the obstacles to self-compassion. Why can't we practice it? What prevents us? What unconscious roots does this resistance have? What incorrect assumptions might be in our minds? Let's examine these one by one. A little later, we will talk about confronting suffering and the fears that prevent us from approaching it. This part will help us slowly nurture the seeds of compassion within ourselves. So, to recap, we've talked about the layers of shame and how the remedy for this paralyzing shame is self-compassion. Now, we want to talk about the obstacles to this self-compassion. One is the belief that self-compassion is self-indulgence. One of the reasons we might not extend this compassion to ourselves is that we don't like to be pitied, especially if we are children who suffer from this shame. We don't want to feel sorry for ourselves. A common mental barrier is the thought that self-compassion will lead to these kinds of feelings. However, as we will explain, that's not the case at all. In fact, self-compassion comes to transform all these feelings in a positive way. The second obstacle is the fear of being seen as weak, lazy, or selfish. Let's break this down. First, being weak. For children who suffer from shame or have experienced abuse, who grew up in poverty or in a negative emotional environment, being weak is equivalent to death, to non-survival. Think about the background of these children, about our own backgrounds. You grew up in a situation where that child needed to be very strong just to survive, to pull themselves out of the fog of suffering. So now self-compassion might evoke the idea of weakness. Acknowledging that it was painful contradicts the very assumption the child lived by, that it wasn't painful at all. But we must understand that self-compassion makes us strong. Look, do these names seem weak to you? Was Buddha a weak person? Was Gandhi a weak person? Was Nelson Mandela a weak person? These are all icons of self-compassion in history. In fact, self-compassion makes you strong. These are people who changed history in a positive way. They are the bravest people in the history of our planet. The second issue is laziness. We said one obstacle to self-compassion is the fear of being weak or lazy. Look, for many children who have experienced abuse, one of the toxic engines that has driven them to succeed is the experience of shame. Think about this for a moment. You might be a very successful person. You might have progressed well through academic ranks and have a very impressive resume. But for a moment, think about this success and what brought you this far. It's likely that same experience of shame. This is very widespread. We are probably still trying to prove ourselves to the grown-ups, to show them we are not an unlovable boy or girl, not a useless child. All the things we are achieving, all the boxes we are ticking, are likely a way to say we can be loved, to present that image to others. But the point is, even if everyone approves of our successes, even if our resume is several volumes long, as long as we don't love ourselves, that void won't be filled. If the whole world confirms that we are extraordinary, we won't get well until we are present for ourselves in that empty, aching place. One of the reasons we avoid self-compassion is that we subconsciously know our very wound is the reason for our successes. But I want you to think about this. Is there no other way to succeed? Of course there is. Must we always achieve things out of fear of not being loved? Did all our achievements give us a feeling of being enough? A sense of peace? Or did that feeling only last a few hours before the next battle began? Not for growth or transcendence, but to prove ourselves. To tick a box within us that was left unticked in childhood? We must tick that box first. Then it's possible to be truly successful, to understand what field you truly want to succeed in. One of the most important knots that self-compassion unties is our confusion. Many of us, even in middle age, don't know what we want to do, what we were born for. That's because many of the goals we successfully pursued were not our own. You know what I'm saying? Self-compassion helps you finally understand what you want, and it will by no means make you lazy or weak. The third thing was becoming selfish. Another obstacle to self-compassion is the fear of becoming selfish. You see, children who experience shame learn to prioritize others over themselves. When they start to attend to their own needs, to give themselves love and compassion, a mental barrier appears. I am so selfish. I am only taking care of myself. This causes them to cut off that compassion again. Know this, friends. If you cannot give this affection to yourself, you cannot give it to another. And if you are giving love and affection while depleted, it's toxic. It's not a healthy relationship. Here's a reminder. All of us watching these videos are children in this context. It's important to know that we are not parents and children here. We are all children. That's why you shouldn't be thinking about what you did with your child right now. That will be fixed. We will get to it once your relationship with yourself is corrected. So, self-compassion is not equivalent to being selfish. Another factor that prevents self-compassion is the toxic belief ingrained in shamed children in a shamed generation that they are deserving of blame. When you want to be kinder and more loving to yourself, to respond to your own needs, what do you do with this belief that constantly tells you, You are wicked, you are dark, you deserve to be blamed? This is something we must think about. And the fourth factor, let's quickly review. The first was the belief that self-compassion is self-indulgence. The second was the fear of being weak, lazy, and selfish. The third was the belief that you are deserving of blame. And the fourth is our lack of understanding of the extent of the suffering we are enduring. The author explains that if we truly knew the immense hidden suffering caused by this denial, this lack of self-compassion, the psychosomatic illnesses it inflicts on our bodies, and the toll it takes on our soul and psyche, we would definitely do something about it. There's an important quote from Albert Camus I wrote down. It's 2 lines, but it's a very important sentence. He says, "When man has learned how to be alone with his sufferings and how to overcome his desire to flee, then there is not much left that he has not learned." A major obstacle to self-compassion is that we don't want to acknowledge our own suffering. We are afraid to be alone with it. I will talk more about this, but I want to read this sentence again because it has a magical effect on me. When man has learned how to be alone with his sufferings and how to overcome his desire to flee, then there is not much left that he has not learned. Know this, friends. Acknowledging our suffering is acknowledging our identity. Look at your life story, from childhood until now. The collection of events has carved you, has shaped you. Part of these events was painful. The bricks that have built the structure of your being, some of them are marked with suffering. If we deny them, the whole structure will collapse. If we don't see them, we have denied our very being. That's why acknowledging suffering, which is the beginning of self-compassion, is the acknowledgement of your identity, of who you are. Now for a very important exercise. We will have 2 exercises in this episode. The first one should be done a day or 2 after watching this video. It is to see yourself from the perspective of an outside storyteller and write about it. The exercise is this. Put a few pages of paper in front of you on a day when you are alone, as it might trigger an emotional release. Start with this sentence, which the author suggests after 35 years of experience. Once upon a time, a little child lived in a house. After the shared beginning, your story begins. Write it. The unique quality of this exercise is that it shows you yourself from a distance. In the first step, it might be hard to write about what you've been through directly. But if you write about a boy or girl once upon a time, you can see yourself from the outside and understand the story you've lived. It's important to know that this is not like writing a novel. You shouldn't impose the burden on yourself of creating a chronological storyline from childhood to the present. In the middle of writing, you might suddenly remember something that happened when you were 9, or an experience from high school. It's like a photo album spilling onto the floor. So don't feel committed to a timeline. Just start with that opening phrase and write down the different frames that come to mind. Try to see yourself and your story from the outside. Another point is expressing anger. While writing this story, you will likely encounter parts that provoke your anger, and this is a very good sign. It means you are doing the work correctly. That anger might be directed towards a school that hurt you, towards your parents, or towards different people. Don't censor it. Don't hide it from yourself. I'll explain later how this anger has a healing effect. But while writing, if you get stuck, if the anger becomes so overwhelming that you can't continue, walk around. That's why you must be alone. Shout, bury your head in a pillow. Do whatever you need to do and then come back to it. If an ugly curse is what describes your feeling, write it down. What you are writing is not for publication. You might burn it at the end. But while writing, don't censor yourself. Write exactly what is going through you. Another thing, definitely write by hand. Experience shows that people who have experienced shame often hide it in their bodies. The body pays a hidden cost. Writing by hand helps the body participate in this release, which is a very positive factor. What this once upon a time exercise does, the author explains, is transfer the direction of anger from inside to outside. You might have mistakenly directed anger towards yourself. There's a saying, depression is anger turned inward, when the real root and correct direction of that anger is outward, perhaps towards educational institutions or external events. This change of direction can be life-altering. It can change the direction of your destiny. It can release some of that internalized anger and point it in the right direction. Don't worry that this anger will stay with you forever. It won't. It helps it come out, and then we'll discuss what happens next. The author says to return the shame to the abuser. This shame belongs to them, not you. Throughout your life, you have wrongly endured this shame. It belongs to the person who inflicted that harm on you, regardless of their role or how sacred they seemed. At this stage, the shame must go back to its rightful place. The author asks how this shame that has filled our being can be dispelled. It is the sound of a scream that can break the silence and make the shame flee. Shame must first be replaced with anger. Allow yourself this anger. Children who have experienced shame often see themselves as the accused. In arguments with friends or partners, the finger of blame in their mental court always points at themselves. They are always the ones condemned. For the duration of writing this letter, give yourself the opportunity to not be the one on trial. It can help immensely. Something else you might experience while writing this letter is the expression of sorrow. Anger and sorrow are two common emotions that surface when you unpack the experience of shame. This is also healthy. The author says to cry. If you can't, get help from a sad movie or music. This is one of those times where, contrary to the usual advice, engaging with something sad can be helpful. And I'll explain why this experience is only temporary. I tell you this with all my heart. All the anger and sorrow you experience, all the darkness you walk through might be scary, but this darkness is not the darkness of the grave. It is the darkness of the womb. This is the darkness that can lead you to a rebirth. Do not be afraid of it. Every person you've seen who is at peace with themselves, who is powerful, whose energy you've admired, every single one of them has been in this darkness. They have all passed through it. No human being can experience rebirth without passing through this darkness. This is part of the journey. Don't be afraid of the anger or the sorrow. Give yourself back the right to feel. Throughout your life, your environment, culture, and upbringing may have taken this right from you. Give it back to yourself. If it's anger, let it be anger. If it's sorrow, let it be sorrow. Do justice to that feeling. It's important. As you write this, take as much time as you need. You don't have to finish it in one sitting. If it gets hard, stop. Cry. Come back to it a few hours later or the next day. Keep adding to it. At the end, read it once. When you see your story from a third-person perspective, it's fairer, and you can see yourself without your usual biases. Don't be ashamed of any detail. You are the only audience for this letter. You will tear it up or burn it. Don't be afraid. A written text can feel like a binding document, so reassure yourself that you will destroy it. During this period, it's also important to take refuge in nature. Nature is our mother. Its embrace can heal us. Exercise can help a lot. Being kind to your body is crucial. We'll talk more about this later. And a golden point the author makes is that during this period, and from now on, we must allow ourselves to receive compassion from others. The author discusses the obstacles that prevent children who suffer from shame from doing this. They don't let others show them affection. How? One way is by believing, I don't need it. You might believe you don't need the approval and affection of others, but you do. You may not need their approval, but you do need their affection and compassion. It could come from a stranger. Think about your own experiences when you're out shopping, how a simple smile can fill you with a warm feeling. You need that compassion, and needing it is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of our humanity. Another obstacle is thinking it's useless. How is another's compassion going to help me? It is useful, very much so. Another thought might be, I've moved past my childhood experiences, I'm fine now. Look, until you actually go back and deal with it, you haven't moved past it. Socrates said, an examined life is worth living. Have you done the long, arduous work of confronting those feelings and giving them meaning? If not, what you think you've moved past is likely a form of denial. Another reason we don't let others show us compassion is a feeling of unworthiness, which we've already discussed. Yet another is the difficulty of accepting good things about yourself. Children who suffer from shame build a defensive wall to keep negative things out because their cup of shame is so full that one more drop could make it overflow. But this wall also blocks positive things like compassion from others from reaching them. The author suggests a very simple exercise that we should start right after this video. I found it very insightful. It made me aware of what I was doing and taught me a new way, all while being incredibly simple. The exercise is to learn to accept compliments, praise, and compassion from others. The author says to observe your reaction when someone compliments you. What a good meal you cooked. What a nice outfit. What a good job you did. Children who suffer from shame will likely deflect, oh please. It's nothing. Well, my top half looks good, but my bottom half is a mess. They make all sorts of justifications, creating a defensive wall to block the compliment. To tear it down. Very simply, from this moment on, if someone compliments you or says something nice about you, just take a deep breath and let that compliment in. That's it. Hold it for a second, and then, with an exhale, look them in the eyes and just say, thank you. Only thank you. Not, oh please, or you're too kind. Just thank you. It will feel strange and new. Experience it. You might think it's simple, but in your interactions, when you internalize that positive feeling, pause and then show gratitude to the person who saw that good thing in you, it makes a difference. Thank you. Just that. This exercise helps a lot. The next chapter, chapter 6, I want to get to our final exercise. I said we have 2 in this episode, and I must describe this chapter. I hope I haven't tired you out. Chapter 6 is called Feel Your Own Pain. The author says that in the healing process, shame must first be replaced by anger or sorrow. This process is necessary for alleviating shame, and it's a good sign as we've discussed. She says it's painful to realize that people who were important to you, parents, teachers, adults you held dear, could be so cruel, so selfish, so ignorant. This is very painful, but this pain is a sign of healing. We need strategies to truly confront this pain. But the author doesn't just say, confront this pain. She addresses the question, if I don't confront this pain, what will I lose? And what fears are preventing me from confronting it? She discusses each one, and we will too. The author explains what we lose if we disconnect from that painful experience. This is a very important question. We must first see the price we pay when we keep procrastinating this difficult confrontation. The first point is that you will never know your true self. You won't know the difference between your needs and your wants. I might have wants that conflict with my real fundamental needs, but because I don't know myself, I remain unaware. This is one of the side effects of not meeting with ourselves. I don't know what my real needs are. I don't know what I want in life, what I like, what I dislike, or what I should do with this one opportunity called life. You will never know your true self. 2, you lose positive and negative emotions together because of that same defensive wall. 3, your emotions get distorted and redirected. You don't even feel your feelings anymore. When you start turning shame into other feelings, your other emotions get transformed too, until you're living a completely different life, disconnected from the reality of the here and now. 4, your energy decreases because you are spending so much of it preventing emotions from surfacing. You are covertly always tired, always feeling as if you've been beaten up, as if you've just come out from under a semi-truck. This is a sign of that hidden cost. 5, you become lonely. First, you become separated from others. Because of the previous 4 points, you have no energy. You don't know what you like or dislike. You lose positive and negative emotions, and you neither give nor receive love. You don't know your true self, so your relationships become superficial. And worst of all, you lose yourself. We become so lonely that we are no longer even with ourselves. This is what happens if we don't connect with the pain. The next point is so important, and she is so right. Each of these points has helped me so much because I've only just understood what a heavy price I'm paying by being in denial. She asks why we resist the feelings of grief and sorrow from that experience. What fears do we have? She explains these fears one by one, and because she has been doing this for more than 3 decades, It all comes from lived, clinical experience and rings true. She says one fear you might have is the fear of drowning in grief and sorrow. When you approach that sorrowful experience, you fear, what if I remain in this suffering for my whole life? Because there's a heavy emotional release at first. She says this is a completely valid fear. When you start, the amount of sorrow or anger is very high, but the point is, you will get past it. In this process, you will cry a lot and experience intense anger and other emotional states. But these are all good signs. Just allow yourself to experience them. Don't block them. The second fear is becoming so overwhelmed with sorrow that you become depressed. This fear is also logical, but here's a point where all schools of thought in psychology agree. When you don't allow yourself to express suffering, you become depressed. The fear of remaining in depression is valid because you are experiencing sorrow, but every academic who has studied the human psyche confirms that it is by not going there that you become depressed. The third fear is not having the strength to endure the suffering. As that door opens, you might ask yourself, can I carry this burden? You definitely can. The reason is that you have already endured it. In childhood, when you had less strength, less knowledge, fewer emotional muscles, and fewer resources for healing, when you were, in a word, weaker, your true self went through those experiences and survived. It's true you had to numb yourself, but you are alive. And at a subconscious level, you know what happened. You were able to do it in childhood. You can definitely do it much more easily now. She makes a very interesting point about this fear. She says, my experience as a therapist tells me that until you are subconsciously ready, your subconscious won't even let you go near it. Many people may have heard the first part of this series, but we're at a stage in life where their subconscious wasn't ready to face the story. Maybe later, in another situation, through another means, they will approach it when the time is right. But if you have come this far in this video without stopping, without your subconscious creating a distraction, it means you are ready. It means your subconscious knows you have the strength. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come this far. And an important point, these 2 letter writing exercises are the hardest part. After this, it's not nearly as difficult. In fact, we've already passed the most difficult stage, the moment of realization. Oh, I have shame. Oh, my story wasn't all roses. I was wounded here. Oh, I had numbed myself. All these realizations create a painful experience. So know that a large part of the hard part is over. Don't be afraid. Come forward and know that you have the strength and endurance for it. The fourth fear is the fear of remaining in the past. This is also a valid fear. But again, what does science say? What do the people who have dedicated their lives to this field say? They say that when you don't go to the past, you are controlled by it. Going to the past is the only way to be freed from it. You don't stay in the past. You spend a period there precisely so you can break its curse on your entire life. Now for a few more recommendations. In this period, as you approach these wounds, be kind to yourself. Be kind to your body. An experience you might have while writing or thinking about shame is a feeling of helplessness and loneliness. Later, we'll talk about how to share this with others, but at this stage, while working alone, one thing that helps a lot is be kind to your body. Remember we said the body is an extension of the mind. It is the mind. So when you are uncovering a trauma, it's important that you calm your body. Be kind to it. How? Eat healthy food, at least for this 1 week. Exercise, do stretches. Your body is carrying this heavy load. Help it. Give it strength. Wear nice clothes, even at home. This is simple, but it helps a lot. During these 10 days or so while you write these letters, be stylish. Wear your best clothes when you go out to work or a party. That shirt you saved for a special occasion? Wear it now. Now is the time. It helps. Meditation also helps immensely. If long sessions are tiring, do short ones. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, just a few breaths. Nature helps. Another important point, don't judge your emotions. Don't say, I hate this feeling, or I shouldn't have this feeling, or what's wrong with me. Instead, tell yourself, I have the right to have this feeling. I said it before, give yourself back the right to feel. Also, don't be afraid of your dreams during this time. We often have nightmares where we're in the middle of a battle and wake up scared. but dreams are your subconscious's attempt to sort out your experiences. If you're having bad dreams after delving into a difficult experience, that's a good sign. It means your subconscious is working on it. I myself had a night of intense nightmares during this process, and I felt much better afterwards, not immediately upon waking, but from the next day on. It was as if a setting in my subconscious had shifted. So don't be afraid of bad dreams. They are a sign that the work is going deep to the level of the subconscious. To put your mind at ease, let me say that I consider Jung to be a very important figure. Who am I to say he's important? But in my opinion, Jung is a fascinating person. He talks about the ego, which is the part of ourselves that we know, which is often a mask we've come to believe is real. But behind this small, limited, fearful consciousness, there is a large subconscious that Jung calls the self. Jung says this self is millions of years old, and its traces are in our genetics. The entire story of our ancestors is within each of our cells. Within you and your subconscious, you are an ancient, wise human, millions of years old. Let it do its work. Move the ego aside and let the self do its work, and use your ego to help it. Now for the final exercise. The first was the once upon a time story. What's the second? The second one is a bit hard, honestly, but doing it is incredibly helpful. After you've written the first letter, give yourself a few days. Review everything we've talked about, the fears, the obstacles. Then you must write a letter to yourself, to your inner child. In the first exercise, we saw that child from the outside as a he or she. Now we want to approach that child and address them as you, on the path to becoming an I and eventually a we. After writing about him or her, go forward. First, do this work alone. Don't wait for others to leave you alone. Ask for solitude. Tell them, I am working on shame, and I need a few hours of privacy. This letter will likely bring up more sorrow than anger, and you'll need space for that emotional release. As before, if you need to stop, walk around, do so. I started my letter with, "Hello, my dear." And it was a strange experience to finally see myself after all these years. Then it begins. You can start with whatever feels right to you. Allow yourself that emotional release. Don't be afraid of this letter. I say with all my heart that writing this letter can divide your life into a before and an after. I know it's hard. If your chattering mind is telling you it's useless, that one letter can't do anything. Just tell it. There's no harm in trying. It's a few hours of your life. Maybe it will help. I hope it does. So those are the two exercises. Do them. And throughout this next week, which I know will be hard, be kind to yourself. Know that there are many wounded hearts alongside you, that we are all on this path together, and you are not alone. And be sure that this pain, with all its difficulty, is a path to healing. You see how much I'm talking? It's because I want to put your mind at ease. Look, if we need an operation on a tooth or a knee to fix one joint, we expect 2 months of pain, right? But then it gets better. Now think about it. We want to heal our very personality. Of course, it's going to be painful, and that pain is natural. Don't be afraid of the pain. Pain is the key to this healing, and we are all moving forward together, even without seeing each other. We are all together, and together we will get through it. I wish you the best from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing and transformation with Psyche Alchemy. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay part of our community exploring the depths of the psyche. Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, keep flowing toward your true self.